All right, everyone. So, one of the most famous stories of the ancient Greek world, the Battle of Thermopylae. If you're not familiar with this, it's all big part of what is called the Persian War. Of course, that movie, The 300, came out a while back, and it's a fun movie, but of course, a bit exaggerated to say the least, about what you saw happening during the battle. So, I want to kind of give you guys a quick background as to the origins of the battle, what actually did happen during the battle, and why it's such an epic part of the story of ancient Greek world and specifically the Spartans, although it was more than just the Spartans who were involved. I've actually been to the battle site. I'm going to show you something really cool at the end of this, towards the end of the video, kind of tying all that in together, because what you actually see in the movie and what the battle site actually looks like are very different, but I'm going to explain why that is. So here we go, a little background. So first of all, what would happen is you had the whole Persian War. Everything in green on this map represents the Persian Empire. And what had taken place is a big war developed between the Greeks and the Persians. I'm not going to get into the details of how that war started in this particular lecture. I've got other lectures where I cover some of that. But what had ended up happening is there was a couple battles. One battle about 10 years before the Battle of Thermopylae called the Battle of Marathon, in which the Greeks won. That was during the period of the Persian Emperor Darius the First. After the Battle of Marathon, where the Greeks actually surprisingly in many ways defeated the Persian first major onslaught onto the Greek mainland, Darius had died, and he was replaced by the next Persian emperor, Xerxes. And he is the one who decides after a few years to continue on the plan of the Persians to try to conquer the Greek world. So, of course, again, when we're looking at our map here, everything here is the Greek world. Now, again, at the time, if you hadn't seen my other lectures, the Greeks were not united. The Greeks were divided into a whole bunch of what we call city-states. A polis is a city-state, and there were a bunch of them, hundreds of them probably. And Athens, Sparta were the biggest, most famous ones, but there were a lot of other little city-states as well. So what's going to happen is as this war is going on, after the Battle of Marathon debacle for the Persians, Xerxes is going to try again, this time at what will become the Battle of Thermopylae. Now, Xerxes actually had a big plan. Before we get into Thermopylae, I want to show you this map here because you see his plan is to attack the forces to attack Greece from two fronts, one by land and one by sea. What you see in the map here on the red, this is of course going to be this land attack, right? And then there's also going to be the naval attack as well. Now, I'm not going to get into the naval attack in this story. It's actually another really cool story. I should probably make a lecture on that as well. I want to focus on the land invasion. Now, how many troops did Xerxes have in this massive invasion in 480? Well, if you were to believe Hollywood, like 2 million men are about to descend on the Greek world. Well, it was probably not 2 million, but it was probably hundreds of thousands, maybe 500,000, which in itself is absolutely mind-blowing because when you stop and think about it, numbers of that size, 500,000 men. I mean, you think of like the Napoleonic army that invaded Russia, the Grand Army, that was like 600,000 men, and that was in the 1800s AD. So 500,000 men is a massive force to go. So when he wants to do this land invasion, one of the things you can see on the map here, he's starting here, Xerxes, from Asia Minor, right? And he's making his way up north. Now he's got a problem because right over here, there is a waterway called the Hellespont, right? And this Hellespont, is a very narrow waterway. And if Xerxes is going to do this land invasion, he somehow has to cross the Hellespont. He could actually go all the way around the Black Sea, but that's going to take a lot longer. It's probably going to add at least a year, maybe 2 years to his whole campaign. Or he can cross the Hellespont. Now, how do you cross the Hellespont? And this is one of the cool events leading up to the Battle of Thermopylae. Because if you're going to cross the Hellespont, how do you do it? And what the Persians came up with is this ingenious way of creating a bridge of ships. And I have a kind of image here depicting kind of this construction of this bridge of ships across the Hellespont. where apparently it took like 700 boats, kind of older boats that weren't being used to ferry his navy across the Aegean Sea, and he tied them together with wooden planks and, all connected here, and he had his men march across the Hellespont. Now, the Greeks had like a couple spies there up in the north. They saw what was happening. And if you're watching this, I talk about this with my students all the time. And I ask my students, hey, if you're seeing this, what are you thinking right now? And you're really worried. And why are you so worried? Because shows us that the Persians are not just this big army. These guys are very intelligent, right? To build a bridge of ships that you can then launch men and supplies all across, this is not an easy task. So that means they're smart, they're intelligent, they're good at engineering, and they have a massive army coming at you. So the Greeks know that this force is coming towards them. Now the question is, what are they going to do? So this gets us to the battle. So of course they come up from the north and they start making their way down. Now, why do we have the battle at Thermopylae? Well, what ended up happening is the Greeks saw the Persians coming and they decided to go to Thermopylae to try to slow them down. Why? Well, geography. If you look at Thermopylae, for my students around where I live, I kind of describe it to PCH, Pacific Coast Highway, because you got the freeway, you've got mountains, and you got water, right? And the pass itself, back when this battle took place, and again, it's very different today, is maybe a couple hundred yards in width, and that's it. And so the reason the Greeks decided to go to Thermopylae is, I don't care if you have 1 billion men with you, how many can you get through this narrow pass at one time? And the answer is not that many. And so what the Greeks decided to do is, instead of finding them in an open field, take this geography advantage, and this is where I kind of get into a lot of detail on this in my students in my class, how geography impacted battles and why battles are important. And so the geography was very important here because the Greeks knew the terrain. Now, which Greeks are going to go? Well, again, if you believe Hollywood, 300 Spartans. Well, it wasn't just 300 Spartans. It will be 300 Spartans, but thousands of other Greeks will also go to Thermopylae. Why do we always tell the story of the 300 Spartans? Well, because they are the ones who are going to be there till the very end. And they also had this attitude of never surrendering. I have another video I've done just on the Spartans, and if you know anything about the Spartans, there's a famous story of a Spartan mother I recount in one of my other lectures, and her son's about to go off to battle, and the Spartan mom tells her son, "You're off to a great battle. You better come back victorious, or you better come back dead, being carried on your hoplon shield." And that's the mom talking to her son. So safe to say the Spartans, retreating was not an option for them. And again, I have another detailed lecture on the Spartans if you want to watch that. It'd be really cool, actually. Anyway, so with that, the Greeks the Persians arrive, and the 300 Spartans arrive with several thousand other Greeks, and they get to Thermopylae. Now, we have a source by a man named Herodotus, a Greek historian, who gives us details of what happened. And this is where we get some details of the battle here that are pretty astounding. Because the story goes that over the year, as the forces met, one of the Persian emissaries approaches the Spartans, and he sees the Spartans there, the 300 of them, and he basically says, "Look how many men we have, you should just retreat, don't even bother." And of course, the Spartans are like, we're not falling back, not by the hair of our chinny chin chins, we're not moving, right? And then, apparently there was this famous line, it's in the movies, it's in the books, it's in the story all the time, that the Persians say to the Spartans, "Look, we have so many archers that when they fire their arrows, we will blot out the sun." To which the Spartans reply, "That is fine, then we shall fight in the shade." And that's kind of captures the attitude of the Spartans. So they start going at it. And this battle is going to last for 3 days, right? And what is remarkable, it's the same 300 Spartans standing there. Now, what ends up happening is, yes, you got a row of 300 Spartans, and maybe the Persians can only put a few hundred in as well at any one time. And so the Persians get their first wave is stopped. But then the Persians have more and more men. The Persian soldiers, I didn't put this term up, were sometimes called the immortals. And why do they call them immortals? Not because you can't kill them, but you kill one and like 10 more pop up. because they had so many. And so what ends up happening is they just send more waves after more waves, and it's basically the same 300 Spartans along with the other Greeks holding them off in this narrow pass. This goes on for 1 day, goes on for 2 days. Now, they don't fight constantly. There's these, attack and stop type things happening, but they can't break the line. And then we get to the third day, and what happens on the third day is both tragic and pretty dramatic at the same time from the Spartan perspective. By now, it's pretty much just the 300 Spartans left. But during the third day, there was either a traitor or a spy on the Spartan side who went to the Persians. He snuck along the Persian line, and he told the Persians, hey, you're going about this all wrong. You could get around this pass. You could take some of your men, circle around the pass. Obviously, I'm exaggerating. You wouldn't have to go that far westward, so it was much more narrow. I just can't draw it perfectly here. But there's another little pass around to get to the other end of Thermopylae that the Persians didn't know about. But when they found out about that, that's exactly what they did. And so then the Persian forces come circling around as well through the pass, and now the geographical advantage becomes a disadvantage because they have mountains on one side, sea on the other side, Persians on one end, Persians on the other end, and the Spartans are surrounded. They keep fighting until all the Persians fall and die at the Battle of Thermopylae. So they're pretty much all going to be killed there. And so what now? What does that mean? Well, first of all, let me show you what it looks like there today. So this is, first of all, a memorial to the king of this is King Leonidas. He's the one in the background, if you can't tell the difference. And so this is when I was there years ago. And so King Leonidas, he was the king of the Spartans who led the Spartan 300, one of the kings, or actually two kings of the Spartans, who led them into the battle. Now, if you actually go see it, and I hope this works, I'm going to try to put a video in here within my lecture here. Good. All right. So this should be playing, and I want you to see how it goes around. So this is the actual battle site. And if you look at it, it doesn't look anything like the actual movie. Okay, so what happens there? So if you look at it, if I showed you that video there real quick and kind of circle around, you don't see the sea. Where is the ocean? And the reason you don't see the sea is because of this map that kind of explains it. It's a little grainy, so let me try to explain it here a bit. So you are here. That's the battle site, right? Let me make it in red so you can see it a little better. That's the actual battle site. And back in the day, what ended up happening is the coastline was much closer. This was kind of the coastline. This over here is the modern coastline. So what's happened over the centuries since the Battle of Thermopylae, the water level in that area has gone down. So you're not as close to the actual battle site. So that's why if you go look at it today, yes, you see mountains on one side, but on the other side, there's just land, because this was like 2,500 years ago almost, right? Roughly around that time period. So geography changes. So the modern coastline and the ancient coastline are different. That's why if people go visit Thermopylae today, it's not going to look exactly like it does in the movies or what's depicted in the story. So that's kind of just a cool little thing about that I mentioned as well. If you ever decide to go there and it doesn't look like it, well, that's why. All right, so now what? So what's next? Well, the Persians do defeat the Greeks, and in fact, they make their way all the way to Athens. They sack the city of Athens. They destroy much of Athens, and the question is this going to kind of end up having the Persians win the Persian War? The answer to that is no, and that has to do with the naval battles and some other events that are going on and some more land battles that follow, maybe other lectures for another time. But mainly I wanted to kind of give you a sense of this Persian War, the Battle of Thermopylae especially. It's a pretty cool story. I hope you found that interesting. Again, I have a lot more detail on the Spartans in a separate lecture. If you haven't seen that yet, it's a good one. And that's it. So I hope you found all that interesting, and everyone have a great day. Thank you.